sing a song with the army of the free. Count the brave, count the true, who have fought to victory. We're the army and proud of our name. We're the army and proudly proclaim. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the cages loud and strong. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along. First to fight for the right and to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done, fighting till the battle's won, and the army goes rolling along. And it's high, high, hey, the army's on its way. Count off the canes on its front. For wherever we go, you will always know that the army goes rolling along.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. A couple of announcements to start off with today, but before I get to that, I'd like to say thanks to Robert Palladino for joining us here at the State Department, back at the State Department, and being the deputy spokesman here. As you know, Robert gave his first gaggle off camera yesterday, and he did a terrific job. I had the pleasure of sitting in the back of the room for the first time during a briefing, and boy, was it intimidating sitting all the way back there and hearing all of your questions. So had I done that before I'd taken this job, I might not have taken this job. But you did a fantastic job yesterday.
I know it very hard.
You did a fantastic job yesterday. We're so proud of you and thrilled to have you back here at the State Department. Yeah. Okay, couple announcements, and then I'd be happy to take your questions. I'd like to start out by talking about an event that the Secretary attended at the White House earlier today, where he congratulated two Americans who were recognized by President Trump and Secretary Pompeo for their extraordinary work to fight and combat human trafficking. It was the President's Interagency Task Force to monitor and combat trafficking in persons. It was an annual meeting that was held at the White House. It was also attended by Ivanka Trump. The event is typically chaired by the Secretary of State, but for the first time ever, the President attended that event as well. Together, they presented the Presidential Award for extraordinary efforts to combat trafficking in persons. Mean Apatel Davis, who serves as Mayor of Houston's Special Advisor on Human Trafficking, and William Wolf, a law enforcement officer who helped recover more than 125 victims of human trafficking, were acknowledged for the outstanding impact that they have left on their committees. The Secretary also championed an additional $25 million that was awarded under our program to end modern slavery. Next, and we've had a busy day here at the State Department, the Vice President was here earlier today. He was here this morning to open the Conference on Prosperity and Security in Central America. The Vice President underscored the United States has never been more committed to helping our Central American neighbors tackle the security and economic challenges driving illegal immigration and to building a more prosperous future for the region. Secretary Pompeo is co-hosting the two-day event with Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen and our Mexican partners, Foreign Secretary Videgaray, the Secretary of Government Navarrete, and we also welcomed President Hernandez of Honduras, President Morales of Guatemala, and Vice President Ortiz of El Salvador. As Secretary Pompeo noted this morning, we must all work together to secure our borders, to protect our citizens, and increase opportunities for legitimate businesses to invest in the region. For our part, we know that if our partners in Central America are stronger, the United States will be stronger as well. Last thing I'd like to address, and today we had a group of young Afghan girls here at the State Department, and many of you may recall last year, a little bit of a controversy with the Afghan robotics team. Eventually, those gals were brought into the United States. This year, they came back. In celebration of the International Day of the Girl, I'd like to welcome members of the first all-girls Afghan robotics team to the State Department today. The team received the 2018 Game Changers Award at the Asia Society Gala in New York City on Tuesday. They've spent the week meeting with several government and NGOs here in Washington. As you may remember, they earned a silver medal at the first Global Challenge in Washington last summer for a robot that uses solar energy to support small-scale farms in Afghanistan. We're thrilled to see them back in Washington and want to offer our congratulations to this inspiring group of young women who represent a promising future generation of empowered Afghan girls and women and serve as a testament to the resilience of the people of Afghanistan. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Yes, congratulations to them. I assume that they didn't have the same visa issues this time around as they did last time. As I recall, it was the president himself who intervened and got them their visas.
We learned a lesson there.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, congratulations to them. Can we start with the whole Jamal Khashoggi case? One is just generally, is there anything new that you can report to us on what your understanding of what happened to him is? And then secondly, the president, in some kind of an interview this morning, said that you guys did have investigators on the ground, and then a Turkish official came around and said, no, that's not correct. Can you, what's the story here?
Sure. So to take the second part of your question first, whether or not there are investigators on the ground, the United States government has offered its support to the Turkish government to provide law enforcement assistance to the Turkish government. In terms of whether or not we have people on the ground, that's not something that I can address here from this podium. That's not something that the State Department does. I'd have to refer you to some of our other government agencies that could or would be involved with that, such as Department of Justice and others.
Right. But there are regional security DS officers on the ground already.
Yeah.
You know, they're always there. You can't say
we do have that. Our diplomatic security officers, to my knowledge, don't handle those types of investigations. They handle State Department matters only.
And then the first part of the question, is there anything
new on that
in terms of your understanding or lack of understanding of what happened?
Yeah, and I think it's something that's really important to keep in perspective. As we have said from the beginning, we are not certain about what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. The Secretary released a statement earlier this week. The Vice President has talked about this. The President has talked about this. We are all concerned about his whereabouts. We don't have any information on his whereabouts right now or what happened to him. As you can see, anytime you turn on the news, you open the newspaper, there is a lot of speculation and there are a ton of rumors out there. We are making determinations and watching this for facts. We don't have the facts yet. And so we are going to hold back on our comments until we have concrete information that the U.S. government can share. We don't have that information at this point right now. An investigation, as our understanding is underway, and we're not going to get ahead of that.
Okay, last two, but they're the same question. The Turks and Turkey has announced that they're going to join in or take part in some kind of working group with Saudis to shed light on what happened. Is this something that you might be involved in, or is it something that you would welcome? And then secondly, I just wanted to follow up on a question I asked Robert.
Let me just take that part, because we welcome a thorough and transparent investigation, and we've been extremely clear about that. I can also add another piece of information that we have communicated with the Saudi ambassador to the United States. It's my understanding that he is on his way back to Saudi Arabia. We have said to him that we expect information upon his return to the United States. When and if we have additional information to bring you, we will bring it to you right away.
is your understanding? Did you tell him that he better get
We
his?
absolutely did not. That was not at our,
But you've
that was
told
not
him
in our
not-
direction. I can't speak on behalf of that government, but I can tell you that I'm told that he's headed back to his home country, and we expect some information when he gets back.
Oh, well, have you told him not to bother coming back unless he has an
Matt,
explanation?
no.
All right, and
I'm
then-
not going to get ahead of things. I mean, look, the U.S. government is extremely concerned about this situation. This has the highest attention at the highest levels of the United
I'm
States.
not trying to make light of it. I just want to know, have you told him that, look, when you get back here, you better have
We
better
would
have an
like some
explanation for
information.
him.
We certainly would, and I don't think we've been shy about
And then
that.
last one, and I'll shut up. Yesterday, I asked Robert, and other people did too, about this reports about intelligence that you guys may or may not, or reports that you did have intelligence that there might be some harm that came to him. He gave a kind of cryptic answer at first, said that you had no advance notice of his disappearance, and then when I pushed him and said, does that mean you didn't have any advance notice that anything bad might happen to him, not disappearance necessarily, he said, we had no advance notice. So I just want to clarify, does that mean you had no advance notice of, or no intelligence or any information about anything that might or possibly could happen to him at the consulate?
Almost never do you hear us talk about matters of intelligence here at the State Department.
Yeah,
I'm
but-
not going to get into those matters of intelligence. An investigation is on
But-
our way.
but he did
I have
yesterday.
nothing to add beyond what Robert said yesterday here from that podium. But we are going to let this investigation take place. The United States government will continue to offer its support. We will provide information based on facts, based on information that we have. And when we don't have facts, we won't bring them to you. I would just be mindful of the speculation and a lot of rumors that are out there, and let's wait until we can get some solid information. Okay, Leslie, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to come back to the Saudi ambassador. He's gone with a message from Washington back to Riyadh, or was he recalled?
No, and that's why I just said, my understanding is that he's on his way back there. We said when you come back, we'd like to get a report from you.
Right, and so the message from the US is from him. Bring us what the Saudis know, or the outcome of an investigation, or I'm just a little confused.
No, there's no reason to be confused about
Right.
this, okay? Because there is an investigation underway.
Correct.
We're not going to get ahead of that investigation. We will let that investigation play out. I know there are a lot of people who want answers at this point, understandably so, but we're not going to get ahead of those investigations. And so bring us whatever information you have when you return, and we'll go from there.
Is that above what the Secretary as well as Bolton them discussed with the Crown Prince yesterday?
I'm sorry, is that
So-
above? What does that mean?
Meaning, so yesterday Bolton, two institutions in the government spoke to MBS yesterday, the Crown Prince. Were they not satisfied with what they were told, and therefore the
I wouldn't
ambassadors
assume
got
that
to
at all. Look,
come back?
obviously, we have multiple agencies and departments in the United States government that are paying close attention to this issue. So I would not make the assumption that we didn't get satisfactory answers and therefore it required another level of
Another level,
communication to go in.
correct.
Okay, this is obviously an interagency effort. Okay, Saeed, go right ahead.
I want to move on.
Okay.
You have another
No,
question?
no,
Up?
Hold on. Okay. Goodness
Yeah, okay,
gracious.
because I wanted to
Okay.
move on. They want,
Okay,
yeah.
look,
I'm
I
gonna
don't
talk
have much
about-
more for you on that, and we're not going to let this go on and on, because we're sticking to the facts here, and I'm not going to speculate. Saeed, I'll be happy to come right back
Okay,
to you, Rich,
okay.
go ahead.
All right.
Saudi ambassador left because of this incident, or was he planning on going?
Okay, third time.
This
Third time. We did not request that he would go.
Okay,
Okay,
that's-
he went over there. My understanding is going over there, but any additional information on that, I'd have to refer you to the Saudi government. We simply said, when you come back, provide us a report, provide us a readout of what you've learned.
and who spoke
Okay.
with him from state?
I don't have any information for you on that, but we've had exchanges at multiple levels at the State Department. Hi, Abby.
That he asked just one part of my question, but the other question was, Reporters Without Borders requested or asked that the UN step in to have an investigation into this. Is that something that the
I'm
US
not
would
aware of
support?
it. You're telling me about that. That's the first I'm hearing of it, so I don't have any comment on
Generally
that.
speaking, do you have any comment on the
I'm not going
UN?
to comment on that. I'm just not aware of that. Okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
There have been some calls on the Hill already saying that arms assistance, for example, defense assistance should be at risk because of this. The president spoke about that today. Is it the position of the State Department that that's not on the table? That
I think they're jumping to conclusions. This is entirely simply a hypothetical situation at this point. We don't know what happened. We don't have the facts of the case. We want to learn what happened. The president has said that. The Secretary of State has said that. Ambassador Bolton has said that as well. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Understandably, it's understandable that Congress and others are concerned, but let's not get ahead of ourselves in that point. Okay, okay, Barbara.
Entirely hypothetical. I mean, the guy's missing.
No, absolutely. We don't know what happened. Okay, let's wait and determine what happened. Barbara, go ahead.
Also about the Hill, the Republican senators yesterday were going and looking at U.S. intelligence related to this case, and Bob Corker said it made the Turkish accounts look quite convincing.
Barbara, I would not have
No,
anything
I'm
on
wondering
that.
if
We don't do
Secretary
intelligence.
Pompeo has seen the
Pardon me?
same. Secretary Pompeo seen the same intelligence?
Barbara, we don't do intelligence out of this building. We do diplomacy. Okay, Saeed, go right ahead. Intelligent diplomacy. We try to do intelligence.
Just one clarifying question as well. There's been a lot of speculation or reporting on what Mr. Khashoggi's immigration status is. Can you clarify at all whether or not he's a lawful permanent resident, if he's on a visa, anything like that?
I think, well, we don't discuss visa applications. I don't have anything additional for you beyond what we've already discussed on his status. Okay, Saeed, go right ahead.
Very quickly on the Palestinian issue. Yesterday, Secretary Pompeo at the award dinner said that, quote, Israel is everything we want the entire Middle East to look like going forward. What does that mean?
Well, I think it means a lot of things.
Yeah,
one, recognizing that we have a strong partner that is a democracy, that is prosperous. It is a country that desires peace. Something that you all will appreciate, they have a free press, and a very vibrant press at that, and a free market economy. Those are all good things that we look to when we see other nations around the world that are stable, that we look to as sort of a beacon of hope in that sense. And I think that's exactly what the Secretary was referring to in his speech.
But Israel occupies another people.
Pardon me?
It occupies another people. It imprisons them. It has checkpoints all over a whole territory. It imprisons journalists. It does all kinds of terrible things. Confiscates land. It does all kinds of things.
It is a fact that it is democratic.
Right.
It is a fact that it is prosperous.
Right.
It is a fact that they have a free press. It is a fact that they have a free market economy that is strong. Those are all good things. Every nation on this globe has issues and areas where they could do a lot better, the United States included in that.
So you would like to see, let's say, Lebanon, sort of duplicate what Israel is.
I think
Okay.
Israel
A
is
couple
a
more
strong
things.
model in that regard.
A couple more things. Is there any news regarding Lara Qasim? Is there anything on that?
I believe she has a hearing that's scheduled tomorrow. You're referring to the American citizen.
Right.
She has a hearing that is scheduled for tomorrow. We provide consular services to American citizens elsewhere. My understanding is that we will have someone either accompany her or be present at that hearing. Beyond that, I don't have anything more for you.
And I promised lastly, yesterday at the closure of the PLO office, the community was out there, and their concern is that they have, as American citizens, they also are Palestinians. They have issues of deeds, lands, and so on that they used to do through this PLO office. And now they don't know what to do about it, how they claim their land, how to get permits, how to do all kinds of things. Does the State Department, I mean, you don't have to answer me now, but if you have an answer to this issue, where they should turn to, like is there a third country that the PLO can name or you can name?
So the operations were required to cease by October the 10th. That is accurate. We're not in the position to speak about where those individuals should go to seek that advice about their deeds, their properties back home. The Palestinian Authority perhaps has that information, and I would encourage people to contact the Palestinian Authority. Hi, Lori.
Hi. On the Iranian sanctions, there's a new round set to take effect in November, and Iraq has been asking for a waiver. What is your position on that?
Well, overall, with regard to those sanctions that will take effect on November 4th, and you're referring to the oil sanctions for Iran and countries that choose to continue purchasing oil from Iran. We have conversations with many partners and allies around the world about those sanctions. We make our policies very clear to those countries. We continue to have conversations with the government of Iraq about that particular issue. and the implications for the reimposition of sanctions that were previously lifted or even waived under the JCPOA. We've given the same message to all countries around the world, and the President has said, and that's that the United States is committed to reinforcing all of our sanctions. We believe that countries coming together and recognizing the malign influence that Iran has had around the world is important. We know that Iran and the government of Iran has taken the benefits that it received under the JCPOA, and they've poured that money not into their own population, not into the good of the people, not into its medical hospitals and things of that nature, but rather they've used it for its own nefarious programs.
That sounds like you're saying no to the Iraqis. Is that?
I'm not forecasting anything. You know, we don't forecast that kind of stuff anymore.
I have a quick follow-up on that.
Hold on, let's move on. Go right ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So, what is your stand with India placing fresh orders now, despite the threat of these U.S. sanctions and the U.S., as you have said from this, that you are trying to find alternative suppliers for them and all that? Because on Monday, the oil minister said that the two state refiners, not the private ones, have placed orders for importing crude oil from Iran in next month.
I've seen that report. As you all know, we were recently in India, where that was a topic of conversation with the Indian government. The president addressed it, I believe it was just earlier today, in which he was asked about that question about whether or not India would buy oil from Iran after sanctions are reimposed. And the president said, and I'm not going to get ahead of the president certainly, but he said, we'll take care of that. He was asked also about CAATSA sanctions and the imposition of possible imposition of CAATSA sanctions. And he said, you know, India's going to find out. And India will find out. We'll see. So I'm not going to get ahead of him. But certainly when we hear about things such as purchasing oil or purchasing of the S-400 systems, it's not helpful. The United States government just reviews that very carefully.
I won't like you to, find what or explain what the president was saying. But when he said India will find out or we will take care of it, do you see a threat? Do you see a friendly, like, okay, we'll let them do it, or we will take care of it?
Well, the president doesn't like to forecast his actions. I can't speak for the president, so I just have to refer you back to the White House. Pardon me?
Done everything that he said he was going to do.
All right, folks, we have footage from inside the press briefing room of the State Department. We're going to be putting it up on your screen as it's set to begin in just a few minutes. So please share this live stream on social media. Don't forget to also click the thumbs up button. That helps out the channel, folks. So if you guys can please share this live stream on social media. This is the State Department press briefing. And this is the very first briefing of, in the month. And it's been weeks since the last one. So stay tuned.
On the campaign.
How are you?
Question, please forgive me,
this in
but
particular?
this is another major news headline of the day, and it's Brunson.
I will come
and
back
I think
to you.
we need to
Hold
address
on.
that.
I'd be more than happy
Thank
to,
you.
of course. Leslie, I've already come to you. Let me try to make it around the room.
I know.
Promise you I will come back to you.
Thank you.
okay?
We need to.
Okay, let me go to
get through
Cindy
this.
with VOA. She has not had a
Go
question
for
yet
it,
today.
please.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, thank you. I was also going to
Let's
ask
share.
about
Let's share, kids.
Right.
Okay, Cindy, go right ahead.
any updates on Pastor Brunson.
Oh, Leslie, she stole your question. Oh, I'm so sorry. In all seriousness, as you all know, this is a case that the entire U.S. government has followed very, very closely. Pastor Brunson has been under house arrest and prior to that imprisonment for far too long. The secretary gave a speech last evening in which he spoke about Pastor Brunson's case. As many of you are well aware, Pastor Brunson has a hearing that's scheduled for tomorrow. Our folks from our embassy in Turkey have been very engaged in this case, have been providing assistance and support in any way that we can for Pastor Brunson and his family. Let me also take this opportunity to remind you that we have locally employed staff who have also been detained, in addition to the NASA scientist who is still in Turkey as well, who is an American citizen. All of those cases have our...
All right, folks, stay tuned. We're going to be putting the footage on your screen for the press briefing with Heather Newart. And there's also going to be information coming out because of the UN is going to get a new ambassador, which most likely is going to be Heather Newart. That is coming later on this week. So let me put it up on your screen. Just give me a second while I try to get all of this situated. All right, we're going to update the lower third. Don't worry, folks. And we'll go on from there. This is live footage from inside the press briefing room at the State Department, where they're set to begin soon. Thank you so much. Please share the live stream on social media. Thank you so much for your help. All right, folks. So we have some information that states that Heather Nauert is the top contender to become the new UN ambassador, as Nikki Haley is set to leave the position towards the end of the year. So Heather Nauert can become the new UN ambassador in January of 2019. Stay tuned for that, folks. The president is set to deliver a speech later on this week, probably at the beginning of next, regarding Heather Nauert becoming the new UN ambassador to the United States.
Yeah. Also, I'll say hi to Nick. No. Better watch that.
Well, I thank you. Learned something new today.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. We're going to start at the top today with our special representative for Iran, Brian Hook. He has some opening remarks, then he'd be happy to take a few questions from you all. Please, Brian, come on up.
Hello. Good to see you.
Wonderful to see you.
Matt.
As you
Now that our sanctions on the Iranian regime have been reimposed, we want to alert nations of the risk of doing business with Iran's shipping sector. If Iranian tankers make calls to your ports or transit through your waterways, this comes at great risk. The United States urges you to consider the advisory we are issuing today. The sanctions that were reimposed on Monday include sanctions on Iran's port operators, as well as its energy, shipping, and shipbuilding sectors. We placed on our sanctions list Iran's national maritime carrier, the Islamic Republic of Iran Shipping Lines, and its oil transport giant, the National Iranian Tanker Company. These sanctions are critical to our maximum pressure campaign. Iran's energy sector accounts for up to 80% of the country's income from exports. The regime uses this revenue to support its terrorist militias, fund missile proliferation, and sustain its revolutionary exploits that destabilize the Middle East. We have also reimposed sanctions on the provision of underwriting services, insurance, and reinsurance. Knowingly providing these services to sanctioned Iranian shipping companies will result in the imposition of U.S. sanctions. As Iran's maritime carriers and vessels are redesignated and lose access to insurance on the international market, they are likely to turn to self-insurance. We suspect they will use Iranian insurance providers such as Kish P&I. Should there be an accident involving an Iranian tanker, there is simply no way these Iranian insurance companies can cover the loss. This is especially important for Iran's crude oil tankers, which are usually insured for amounts of $1 billion or more. Oil spills and accidents involving tankers are extremely costly. The immediate costs associated with response and cleanup can range from hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars. When litigation costs and penalties are added, the total liability is even greater. But the costs of these accidents extend well beyond the initial response and cleanup. Tanker spills can imperil fishing and maritime industries for generations, harm tourism, and create irreversible economic and environmental costs on communities and ecosystems. From the Suez Canal to the Strait of Malacca and all choke points in between, Iranian tankers are now a floating liability. Countries, ports, and canal operators and private firms should know they will be likely responsible for the costs of an accident involving a self-insured Iranian tanker. We sincerely hope there will be no accidents, but accidents are a very real possibility given Iran's record. Only 10 months ago in January, an oil tanker managed by the National Iranian Tanker Company collided with a vessel in the East China Sea. The tanker was carrying 1 million barrels of condensate. The tanker burned for 1 week and then sank. The collision led to the largest release of condensate ever and caused an oil spill the size of the city of Paris. As the cleanup continues, the liability for this will be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Iranian insurance companies only covered a small portion of that vessel's liability. The majority of the tanker's value is covered by international insurers. Now that our sanctions are back in place, these international insurers will no longer be in the risky business of covering Iran's tankers. Self-insured Iranian tankers are a risk to the ports that permit them to dock, the canals that allow them to transit, and the boats that cross their path. This exposes the entire maritime shipping network to immense liability. If entities continue to do business with Iran's tankers, they may assume that Iranian insurers can and will absorb the full liability associated with the accident. This is a fantasy. There is little to gain by taking on so much risk for so little return. Just as concerning, entities who allow self-insured Iranian tankers to transit through their canals or dock in their ports may be facilitating Iran's illicit activity. Iran has supported the Assad regime in Syria by regularly shipping millions of barrels of Iranian crude to the country. Those entities who permit the transit of Iranian tankers may very well be enabling this activity. I have described very serious liability concerns, but all nations should also be aware of the safety standards and practices of Iran's oil tankers. There are increasing reports that Iranian tankers are switching off their AIS transponders at sea. These transponders are safety devices used for collision avoidance and navigation. They enable ships to see other ships and to communicate with coastal authorities. Under international maritime law, vessels have been required since 2004 to use them to broadcast their identity and location. Based on credible data, we now know that up to a dozen Iranian tankers have recently disabled their maritime transponders and have effectively gone dark. We should not be surprised that an outlaw regime also violates basic maritime law. Turning off these transponders makes tankers harder to track and is a tactic that Iran has used in the past to evade sanctions. In 2012, a majority of vessels in the National Iranian Tanker Company's fleet turned off their transponders in the run-up to the imposition of U.S. oil-related sanctions. This tactic is a maritime security threat. These transponders are designed to maximize visibility at sea, and turning them off only increases risk of accidents and injuries. Self-insured Iranian tankers engaging in unsafe behavior with many tons of crude oil on board is courting environmental and financial disaster. Our strong message to any entity considering doing business with these Iranian tankers is to rethink your decision. Protect your port, protect your business, and promote maritime safety. Happy to take any questions. Matt?
Just to, on this whole shipping thing, just to be devil's advocate here for a second, why should people not look at this and say that this is an admission or an acknowledgement that the sanctions are going to make international maritime, international shipping more dangerous?
Well, the burden is on Iran to make it safe. We're not the one turning off the transponders.
You're the one making it impossible or difficult for them to get insurance.
I think you're misplacing the burden of compliance on the United States. Iran has tankers. Maritime law requires them to keep their transponders on. They're turning them off to evade our sanctions.
And then just one other thing. I wanted to go back to the question I asked you on Friday.
Yeah.
And this is it's going to sound awfully nerdy and technical, but I just want to make sure that. So I asked why Treasury Secretary Mnuchin used the word jurisdictions and not countries, and I suggested it might be because Taiwan would be one of the countries getting an exemption, and you said no. I get it, nations. And then the Secretary, when he made his announcement on Monday, included Taiwan as among the 8 countries, he specifically said. Does this mean that at least the two of you, Brian Hook and Secretary Pompeo, regard Taiwan as a country, or is this just kind of a slip of the tongue? Have you heard from the Chinese about it?
No, our policy has not changed. The United States remains committed to the U.S. One China policy, the 3 joint communiques, and our responsibilities under the Taiwan Relations Act.
So why call it a country and court the ire of the Chinese?
The SRE that we have granted to Taiwan is relevant to Taiwan's economy. And anything else you may have heard or whatever you've interpreted, nothing has changed on our policy. Michelle from NPR.
Is the allotments, the waivers, how much oil are these countries allowed to export during this time? Is there a cap on it? And then also, can you explain how you plan to monitor the escrows in the weeks and months ahead?
I can't get into specific volumes because that's confidential. It's a bilateral agreement that was reached in each of the SREs. We do.
But there is a cap on each one?
In order to be eligible for an SRE, a country needs to show a significant reduction. And so we are going to be continuing our path to zero. As you heard the president say today, and I think a couple of days ago, we have been able to take off 1 million barrels from Iran's exports, and we have actually brought down the price of oil. It was at $74 a barrel when the president announced he's out of the deal. We then took off 1 million barrels of oil, and Brent is now at 72, roughly 72. We have been very careful about applying maximum economic pressure without lifting the price of oil, and we've done that successfully. I just remind you that the Obama administration granted 20 SREs, 20 SREs to 20 countries over a period of many years. We have granted 8. 2 of those 8 countries have stopped importing Iranian crude. And if you look at all the countries that were importing Iranian crude prior to when the president left the deal in May, 20 of those countries are now at 0. And so 80% of this regime's revenue comes from oil exports. We are very serious about denying Iran the revenue it needs to destabilize the Middle East and fund missile proliferation and all the other malign behaviors it engages in. Nick.
Brian, the ship you mentioned that sunk off the East China Sea was among those targeted for sanctions in the announcement that came out Monday. Why was that, and what does that say about the accuracy of that list of 700 entities that you put forward?
Well, just because the ship is at the bottom of the sea doesn't mean that it still doesn't have economic consequences. There's still payments on the books. And so that ship, just because it sank doesn't mean that its financial life cycle has come to an end. And so we're very serious about going after all of these energy, the way they move their ships, the oil itself. And so that's why we did that. Lori?
Hi, First N24.
Yeah.
The Iraqi prime minister just said that Iraq is not part of the U.S. sanctions against Iran, and it wants a balanced relationship with the U.S. and Iran. What's your comment on that, and is Iraq in compliance with the sanctions so far?
Well, we granted Iraq a waiver to allow it to continue to pay for its electricity imports from Iran. We are confident that this will help Iraq limit electricity shortages in the south. Iraq is a friend and a partner, and we are committed to its stability and prosperity.
And is it in compliance? As far as you know?
We are very pleased with how we are working with the Iraqis. Leslie.
Brian, since you can't reveal the details of those exceptions that you've made with 8 of these countries, can you at least give us some kind of idea as to how much those countries can import from Iran during this time, and also what level of oil, what reductions are you seeking from all of these at the end of the 6-month period?
I can't tell you what our target is. We do have a target.
You do have that.
Yeah, we do have a target. And, well, our target, yes. I mean, we have a goal to get to 0. As I said, we have an adequately supplied oil market. We have to ensure that we advance our national security objectives while we do not injure our economic interests. If we were to increase the price of oil, it would be bad for American consumers, it would be bad for the global economy, and it would give an advantage to Iran. Now, we foresee in 2019 that we will have more supply than demand, and that puts us in a much better position to bring countries, all countries importing Iranian crude, to 0. So that's our target. During the next 6 months, we are going to be monitoring our diplomatic progress and the price of oil to ensure that we have calibrated this the right way. Francesco.
Brian, why did you want to give those figures? I mean, if it's not a transparent, this all feels rather opaque.
Well, I told you the figure, it's 0. That is the figure. And so oil is a very fluid market. We have done a very good job of increasing oil production. So we have taken off 1 million barrels of oil, and during that same period, the United States increased production by 1.7 million barrels, and we increased exports by 1 million. The Saudis played a very helpful role. The Saudi Energy Minister, Khalid al-Fallah, was very good at increasing production. During that period, we've been very...
All right, folks, we interrupt our ongoing live stream right now to bring you guys breaking news. President Donald Trump has just said just a few seconds ago that Attorney General Jeff Sessions has actually resigned. I'm sorry. He has resigned. The president says, "We are pleased to announce that Matthew G. Whitaker, Chief of Staff of Attorney General Jeff Sessions at the Department of Justice, will become our new acting Attorney General of the United States. He will serve his country well." And it also says that we thank Attorney General Jeff Sessions for his service and wish him well. A permanent replacement will be nominated at a later date. So yes, folks, Attorney General, or former now Attorney General Jeff Sessions, has officially resigned. He is out of the DOJ, as the president is said to find his replacement and announce it within the next couple of days. Thank you so much. And now go back to your scheduled programming.
Countries, and I think that we either have concluded all of our SREs. There are no more than 8. And as I said, 2 of those have already stopped importing, and the rest we have reached agreement with. Yes?
Can you tell us which 2 have stopped importing?
I can't. Nick?
Go back to Michelle's question, Brian. So if you don't tell us exactly how this is going to work or what number you're trying to get to, can you talk about your confidence in knowing the money that goes into these bank accounts and the monitoring that the jurisdictions do? As you know, the jurisdictions, the U.S. relies on those jurisdictions to do that monitoring. Turkey was a real problem last time. Why do you have confidence that Turkey will somehow do better than it did before the JCPOA?
I think you've seen a lot of pre-compliance with our sanctions over the last 6 months. You've seen you've seen over 100 corporations announce prior to November that they are leaving the Iranian market or they're canceling planned investments. On the oil side, we have seen the vast majority of refiners announce that they're out. I think this is a much different environment with our sanctions. I think the world knows that the president and his Secretary of State are very serious about maximum economic pressure, and that will apply to the escrow accounts. One of the advantages of these SREs is that it denies Iran the revenue from its oil sales. They do not get paid in hard currency. This is a regime that is facing a liquidity crisis. And so now these escrow accounts, even those countries who are still importing Iranian oil, Iran does not get the revenue. It stays in an escrow, and then they spend down that amount to import goods from that country that was importing their oil. The Treasury Department monitors the escrow accounts. Secretary Mnuchin, Undersecretary Mandelker, Marshal Billingsley are very focused on ensuring that these escrow accounts are never used for illicit goods. And we will police these very aggressively.
But as you know, Turkey was subject to criminal action last time for evading sanctions. Do you include Turkey on this list because you have confidence that they'll do something different, or they've promised something different, or is this a political decision to include Turkey on
Well,
this list?
we have Turkey as one of the countries. I had very good meetings with my counterparts in Turkey, and we are confident that we have reached an understanding in terms of the next 6 months. Just one more question.
He said we will not obey such sanctions. He announced that he is not going to follow the sanctions. And he said also that he sees this move by Washington as a code violating the global balance and code. What is your answer on this?
President Trump received this same question this morning, and I would refer you to his answer. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Brian. Right through that door. There we go. Perfect. All right. A couple things for the top. Today, the United States Agency for International Development and the Vietnamese Ministry of National Defense announced the completion of environmental remediation of the dioxin Agent Orange at Da Nang Airport. This historic 6-year cleanup effort represents our long-standing commitment to addressing the legacy of the Vietnam War, improving the lives of the people of Vietnam and of future generations. Working side by side with Vietnamese counterparts, we have advanced our strategic partnership and promoted goodwill between our two peoples. The United States Agency for International Development will now turn our attention to implementing the commitment of the United States toward remediation of Agent Orange at the Bien Hoa Airport. And secondly, the United States is concerned by the verdict sentencing Ali Salman to life in prison in Bahrain. We've closely followed this case against the former parliamentarian and Secretary General of the Al-Wefaq Political Society, including a previous acquittal on these same charges on June 21st. We understand the verdict may be subject to further appeals. The United States will continue to engage regularly with the government of Bahrain on a range of shared interests, including the importance of safeguarding fundamental freedoms and human rights. And with that, I'd be happy to take a few questions. Associated Press, please.
Water is good?
The water is good.
No glass today?
No glass. They forgot my glass. No, they didn't. I stand corrected. Let me get my glass, Matt. How's that?
All right.
Perfect.
There you go.
All right.
Thanks. Very
Okay,
nice.
good.
A State Department logo on it, too. Very
It does.
I want to ask you about North Korea and the talks that have been postponed that were supposed to be tomorrow. First, just logistically, why did you guys see fit to announce this at 1 minute past midnight?
So you're referring to the spokesperson's statement that went out last night. And for those who haven't seen it, it announced that Secretary of State Michael Pompeo's meeting with officials from the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, scheduled for this week in New York, will now take place at a later date. We will reconvene when our respective schedules permit. Ongoing conversations continue to take place. The United States remains focused on fulfilling the commitments agreed to by President Trump and Chairman Kim at the Singapore summit in June. As to the timing, as soon as the information that we had was confirmed, we decided to release it as early as possible.
What is the reason and for the postponement? I understand it says in the statement that you'll set it up again once the schedules permit, but why is it not happening tomorrow as planned? And is it is there a rescheduled date for it?
Well, to the latter question, we have nothing to announce at this time. To the previous question, schedules change. Schedules change all of the time, in fact. Sometimes we make these things public. Sometimes, as our schedules change, they're not public. And this is a case we're dealing with purely a scheduling issue, and it's as simple as that.
Well, I mean, scheduling issue can encompass a lot of things. Whose schedule was the problem here? As far as, I mean, the president, when he was asked about this, said something about travel, but the travel that he and the secretary are going to, they're making to Paris doesn't begin until, after this meeting would have happened. Is it that kind of scheduling problem, or is it the problem is a scheduling as in the North Koreans want your sanctions lifted now as opposed to later, and you guys want them to make another concession? They want a step-by-step process. Is that the scheduling that's the issue, or is it personal?
Timing. This has to do with timing. As a matter, we're talking about scheduling, and I'll leave it at that.
Couldn't make it to.
I'm not going to go into details on our discussions with the North Koreans regarding this.
Purely a scheduling issue. If it's just about schedules, why is that secret information? Why not just say Kim Jong-chul's schedule didn't work out, or Pompeo had something else he needed to do? Like, why is this so difficult?
We're not going to go beyond the fact that this is purely a matter of our ability to schedule this. It's as simple as that. There's nothing additional to provide here. President spoke on this earlier today as well, and he's talked about this before. We're not in a rush. We're going to get this right. More on North Korea? Yeah. All right, let's go to the front. Leslie.
Well, the optics of this appears that, last-minute changes at a time when the North Koreans have said they want some of the sanctions lifted, appears that this has run into trouble. That the talks between the two sides have run into trouble. Would that be true?
Not at all. We're actually we're in a pretty good place right now. We are confident going forward. Scheduling issues can happen, but that's okay. We're not going to be driven into artificial timelines. President's been clear. We don't need to rush this. We are going to continue to make progress. North Korea, let's go to Francesco in the front.
How soon do you plan to reschedule this meeting if you have to plan a summit between the president and Kim Jong-un for early 2019?
Nothing to announce right now. We would like the president had a very good meeting with Chairman Kim, not that long ago, just in June, and he's very much looks forward to his next meeting. So we're going to continue to work towards that.
Last time that the president canceled a meeting, it was when Secretary Pompeo was supposed to go there in Pyongyang at the end of August. He said that there were not enough progress to continue talking. And is there some kind of reason like this time, or?
I'll say it one more time. This is purely a matter of scheduling, and we reschedule. Please, let's go to Fox, please. Rich, go.
So, the Secretary divulged a few weeks ago that there was an agreement from Chairman Kim that the denuclearization process would conclude by January 2021. Is there a concern if timing is no object that will be missed, or is that a hard deadline?
We're not going to be driven into artificial deadlines. This is something that the Secretary has said. We're going to continue to make progress, and that's the direction that this will continue to be pushing.
Does anyone want a goal or a deadline, or what? I mean, it was the Secretary who floated that.
Right. We shouldn't confuse the objective, which is the final, fully verified denuclearization of North Korea with the pace at which these types of meetings will take place. Please, let's go CNN from.
Thank you. Yeah. If the Secretary is talking about 2021 as being possible, and he's saying he thinks that they can denuclearize within that amount of time, how is this not a rush? How is there not some time pressure on it?
We've come quite far in a very short amount of time. The meeting in Singapore, the summit between Chairman Kim and President Trump was a very strong first step, and we are making progress, and we're going to continue focusing on that. A lot has happened since that time that we can take confidence in, from the cessation of missile tests to nuclear testing to the return of the remains of American heroes, to the return of American citizens. And we're going to continue working forward and pushing forward on this. Thank you. More on North Korea. Let's look right here, please. Let me see.
The agenda that the Secretary intended to discuss was U.S. inspectors being let into these sites. Are you still confident, given that this meeting has been postponed, that inspectors will be let into these sites?
We're confident. This is a matter of scheduling. Everything else remains completely on track. Please, North Korea. Good. Thank you.
When September 19th, President Moon and Kim Jong-un meeting in Pyongyang, and Kim Jong-un already noticed that they will not give any nuclear list to United States. So, how do you still believe North Korea will be FFVD?
I'm sorry, that I believe North Korea will what?
FFVD, like finally fully verified denuclearization.
That's something that the Chairman Kim agreed to at the summit in Singapore, and we very much look forward to Chairman Kim honoring his handshake with the president and meeting those regards.
Not give any list for the nuclear.
I'm not going to get ahead of negotiations that are taking place, but I will say that we are in regular contact with North Korea, and that's not going to change. Please, let's let one more North Korea. Okay.
How do you balance the president and apparently now the secretary's expression that there will not be any artificial timelines, he won't be pressured into setting those timelines, against the fact that it's obviously in North Korea's interest to have this process go on for as long as possible, and as you saw from the Security Council, the desire for sanctions, for strict sanctions enforcement is clearly crumbling.
Sanctions remain in place, and those are the world sanctions that remain in place. Sanctions are what brought us, to what is possible at this point, and what is possible is, with the denuclearization of North Korea, truly a brighter future for the North Korean people. That's something that we're going to continue to pursue. So let's move on.
I think if I heard you correctly, this might have something to do with scheduling. And then that you said that everything else remains completely on track. Doesn't that answer suggest that these meetings aren't on track? Doesn't that response suggest that there's a problem here?
We have a scheduling matter that we are going to move on from and reschedule, and it's there's nothing beyond that at this point. Our talks are ongoing, our conversations with the North Koreans, and we're going to continue to drive forward.
So you're saying things are going well then with the North Koreans in these negotiations?
We have ongoing conversations with the North Koreans. We will be rescheduling when schedules allow. Next topic, let's go. What do we got? Yemen. Let's go to Yemen in the back, please.
The fighting around Hudaydah seems to be picking up with and UNICEF and MSF and all these aid groups are saying children are at risk at these hospitals. And I wonder what's happened to the U.S. call for a ceasefire.
Well, I would start by saying we closely are following the developments that are taking place in Hodeidah. As the Secretary said, we've been urging all parties to come to the table and to recognize that there's no military victory that can be achieved in Yemen. And we continue to call for a cessation of hostilities and for all parties to support United Nations Special Envoy Martin Griffiths in finding a peaceful solution to the conflict.
Have there been any phone calls? I mean, when you say they're calling for that, can you talk about any meetings, any phone calls, any urgency to that?
We are in daily contact with the Special Envoy. We are in contact with a wide range of Yemeni interlocutors, as well as international partners throughout the Middle East. And we'll remain in touch. More in Yemen? Right here, please.
Would you call on the Saudi coalition to halt this offensive that they seem to now be bearing down on Hodeidah?
We've called for a cessation in hostilities. That would include, as our statement previously has said, both Houthi missiles directed at Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Please, next question.
Last week,
Yep.
you also said that now the timing was right for this cessation of hostilities, this ceasefire to begin. You said that was based on conversations with both sides. Have you had a miscommunication then with the Saudi-led coalition that they're now beginning this offensive?
The timing, our assessment remains the same. We are in contact with the relevant parties, and we're going to continue to watch this closely. Yes. Can we keep Yemen? Yemen? More Yemen? Yemen.
Yeah, I'm just to put a finer point on that. I mean, did the coalition, the Saudi coalition that the U.S. supports, coordinate with or tell you in advance that they were going to increase fighting around Hodeidah, or did they just ignore the Secretary's call?
We've been clear with Saudi, Emirati, and Yemeni officials at every level that the destruction of critical infrastructure or disruption of the delivery of vital humanitarian aid and commercial goods is unacceptable, and we are in close contact with our partners. Yes.
Just to follow up on that, because you're not really answering the question. I mean, the Secretary of State issued a very explicit statement with the Secretary of Defense saying it was time for this to end, and it's not ending. Do you see that as a slap in the face, and what are you going to do about it?
November was the month that we have called for, and that is what the Special Envoy is pursuing. We continue to call for cessation of hostilities. That is cessation of hostilities and vigorous resumption of a political track. That is the way forward. That's how we are going to ease this humanitarian crisis. The United States message remains: we need to end this conflict and replace this conflict with compromise. And that's all I have on this topic for today. More on Yemen?
Yeah, please, just one thing.
Oh.
So since the call for cessation of hostilities, have you seen any reduction in hostilities?
I'm not going to characterize actions on the ground. Our position remains, has not changed. We are closely coordinating and urging a cessation of hostilities and a resumption of the political track, and we'll continue to push forward in that regard. Change topic. I have nothing more on Yemen today, guys. Nothing more. Nothing.
Are you confident at the end of this 30-day period there will be a cessation of hostilities?
We believe the timing is right now. Yes. So, okay. Back here, please.
Muslim announced recently it would host the meeting on November
September 9th on Afghanistan, and I'm wondering if you got an invitation and if any American officials will participate. And also my second question, the administration informed the Congress that Russia hasn't complied with requirements of the Chemical Arms Act, and I'm wondering what will be the next steps? Is there any decision already on sanctions? Can you walk us through this process? Thank you.
Okay. Regarding the first half of your question about meetings in Moscow, the United States believes that all countries should support direct dialogue between the government of Afghanistan and the Taliban to reach an end to the war. And we've been clear that no government, including Russia, can be a substitute for the Afghan government in direct negotiations with the Taliban. Regarding an American representative, I can tell you that in coordination with the Afghan government, the United States Embassy in Moscow will send a representative to the working level to observe the discussions, and the United States stands ready to work with all interested parties to support and facilitate a peace process. Regarding your second question, can you repeat it, please?
Yes, sure. So the administration informed the Congress that Russia has not complied with the requirements of the Chemical and Biological Weapons Warfare Elimination Act. And can you walk us through this process? What will be next? Is there any decision on sanctions already? And what will happen? Are there consultations, or how will it go? Thank you.
Right. Okay. So we made a determination against the Russian government over its use of Novichok, nerve agent, against Sergei and Yulia Skripal back on August 6th. Under the Act, the Chemical Biological Weapons Act, the Russian government had until yesterday, November 6th, to take steps to meet the conditions required under the Act. By yesterday, it had not done so. So we followed what was required under the Act, and we informed the Congress that we were unable to certify that the Russian Federation was in compliance. And so as we move forward, we will be proceeding with our statutory requirements. I'll leave it at that. Is there anything else on Russia? Russia?
When do you expect to impose those additional sanctions? Is there a specific timeline under the statutory guidelines?
The process takes time, and we want to get sanctions right. We need to carefully consider the impact that sanctions have on U.S. national security interests, and I'll leave it at that. But this is something that we take seriously. More on Russia? On Russia, Francesco.
Yeah. Some congressmen expressed regret that you weren't ready with a plan for immediate sanctions once the determination was made, since you had 90 days to know what were the consequences of the sanctions on national security and so on. And they said that this can look as hesitation towards Russia. Are you going to act quickly to answer those concerns?
We are. We want to get the sanctions right. It's important that we do so. Sanctions require. That's a process that takes time. As far as the law goes, the law is pretty clear that under the statute, our obligation by yesterday was to inform the Congress, and we met the requirements of the law. Anything else on Russia, please?
As part of the law, one of the stipulations is the president shall either downgrade or suspend diplomatic relations. Is suspending diplomatic relations one of the sanctions that's being considered?
We will follow the what's required under the Act itself. We intend to do that. As far as what will be considered and what will be imposed, that I'm not going to be able to preview future sanctions in that regard. Last question on any more on Russia? Russia?
Is it correct that there's no timeline for this consultation period?
That is correct.
So in other words, it could last until it could last as long as the North Korea denuclearization process. Or even longer.
At a time and a place that we so choose, we will after we have worked this out, we will move forward. So let. Yeah, but we will move forward. We're unaware of a statutory deadline. Okay.
Take away the impact, though, when you're telling a country, if you don't do this within this period of time, here comes the next much tougher tranche of sanctions. And now you say, well, there's no timeline. We need to get it right. The process takes time. Doesn't that take away the intended bite of the law?
We don't intend to preview when, but the when will come when we are ready, and because we're going to get it right. And that's all I have on that. Last final question.
An easy question.
Saeed, please, Saeed.
Okay. So
never easy.
Two quick questions. Prime Minister Netanyahu told the Israeli radio that occupation was baloney, to quote him. And he says the powerful can get away with anything, referring to settlements and grasping of land and demolitions of homes in the West Bank and so on. Do you agree with his assessment that occupation is baloney?
I would refer you to the Prime Minister for more information on his reported comments. Okay.
What is your position on the occupied West Bank? I mean, the last few months have been like free for all for the Israelis to grasp whatever land, build more settlements, demolish more homes, and so on. What is your position on the occupied land? After all, Mr. Greenblatt was just there. I don't know whether he met with any Palestinians, but could you tell us your position on these issues?
Our policy has not changed. Do you have another question?
I'd like to ask you about your comment. The when will come when we are ready.
Sanctions take time. How about sanctions
The
take
when
time to get
will
them
come
right.
when we are ready.
All right, I'll work on my phrasing. Guys, that's it, guys. Thank you.
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice for the State Department press briefing. As you guys saw, breaking news in between the press briefing, Jeff Sessions has officially resigned. The president came out on Twitter and let the American people know that Jeff Sessions has officially resigned. So he is out of the DOJ. And let me read real quick what President Donald Trump said earlier when he released the information regarding Jeff Sessions. He said, all right, so let's see here. Here we go. It says, we are pleased to announce that Matthew G. Whitaker, Chief of Staff to Attorney General Jeff Sessions at the State Department, the Department of Justice, will become our new Acting Attorney General of the United States. He will serve our country well, and it says that we thank former Attorney General Jeff Sessions for his service, and we wish him well. A permanent replacement will be nominated at a later date. So President Donald Trump is going to be nominating a new Attorney General within the next few days, maybe the next week or so. He is still right now in the middle of nominating a new UN ambassador, which the highest contender right now, the one that is set to become the new UN ambassador, is Press Secretary Heather Nauert from the State Department. So stay tuned for that. That should be coming up in the next few days, along with a new Attorney General of the United States. Thank you so much for choosing us as your stream of choice. Make sure you guys please subscribe if you are new. And also don't forget to click the thumbs up button. That helps out the channel. If you'd like to help out Golden State Times, you can do so on PayPal at paypal.me/GST Live. We cover everything, folks. We cover Trump rallies. We cover Trump speeches from the White House. We cover press briefings from the State Department and the White House and the Pentagon. So we try to cover everything we possibly can to keep you guys up to date on everything that is going on, folks. So if you would like to help out Golden State Times, PayPal is a very good way of doing it. The link is in the description below, or you can also go to paypal.me/GST Live. Thank you so much for your continued support. Also, if you would like to be part of our notification squad, if you want to get notified directly from us when we have a press conference or we have a Trump rally coming up, we have anything that is going on within the White House with President Trump, then you can do so by grabbing your cell phone and texting America First to 555-888. And then you'll get notified directly from me when we go live for a President Trump rally, a speech, a press briefing, or breaking news. Like today's breaking news, Attorney General Jeff Sessions is out of the DOJ. He is now former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, as the president is looking for a good replacement, along with a good replacement for the UN ambassador seat. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Jen. I'm from Golden State Times, and I'll see you soon. Peace. All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. If you guys liked our coverage, don't forget to click that thumbs up button and subscribe if you are new. Jeff Sessions is out at the DOJ. And as you guys would imagine, the Democrats are in right now. They're in turmoil. They're triggered beyond belief. House Democrats just tweeted saying that this is completely unacceptable. President Trump is trying to manipulate the Mueller investigation during the lame duck Congress. We can't let that happen. That is what the Democrats are saying right now. Right now, people on Twitter are saying, you know what? Whitaker is now supervising the Mueller investigation. Any final report by Mueller can go to Whitaker, or will go to Whitaker, who could decline to make it public or transmit it to the Congress. But the House Intel Committee could subpoena it and anyone involved in preparing it. But guess what? As of right now, the House Intel Committee still, the people that were in charge are still in charge for right now. So there's nothing they can possibly do. So stay tuned, folks, because there's a new Attorney General coming. The Democrats are triggered all over social media, and it's going to be crazy to see, especially the next White House press briefing with Sarah Sanders. That is going to be a really good one, so stay tuned for that.